Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivranikacharya Astora Satyashishimara's Divine Grace, founder of ISKCON, Abhay Charanadavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantaraj Shrimadbhagavatam Ki, their most merciful Lordship Shri Kunja Bihari Ki, Shri Jagannath Shri Baladev Mai Subhadra Ki, Shri Nataji Shri Balagopal Ki, Shri Sivarnitai Ki, Nitai Ho Preman. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the Lord of Spirit of Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamatiraya Nasta Praishu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhagavati Naishtiki. So, we are going to recite the names of the Ekadasis before reading from Mohini Ekadasi today. So if you will recite after me, I will repeat all the names of the Ekadasis. Utpana, Mokshara, Sapala, Putrada, Satila, Jaya, Vijaya, Amalaki, Papa Mochani, Kamada, Bharotini, Mohini, Apara, Nirjala, Yogini, Padma, Kamika, Putrada, Aja Kadasi, Parivartini, Indira Kadasi, Papankush, Rama, Haribodini, Padmini, Parama. Now you have kept perfectly, as long as you keep from, and restrain from grains and beans today, now you will get the same benefit as though you fasted the whole day. How about that? Pretty good, huh? Now we'll read from the 12th Ekadasi of the year, entitled Mohini Ekadasi. Yudhisthira Maharaj said, O Janardhan, what is the name of the Ekadasi that occurs during the light fortnight of the month of Vaishakha, April and May? What is the process for observing it properly? Kindly narrate all this to me. Lord Sri Krishna replied, O blessed son of Dharma, what Vasishtha Muni once told Lord Ramachandra, I shall now describe to you. Please hear me attentively. Lord Ramachandra asked Vasishtha Muni, O great sage, I would like to hear about the best of all fasting days, that day which destroys all kinds of sins and sorrows. I have suffered long enough in separation from my dear Sita, and so I wish to hear from you about how my suffering can be ended. The sage Vasishtha replied, O Lord Ram, O you whose intelligence is so keen, simply by remembering your name, one can cross the ocean of this material world. You have questioned me in order to benefit all of humanity and fulfill everyone's desires. I shall now describe that day of fasting which purifies the whole world. O Ram, that day is Vaishaka Sukla Ekadasi, which falls on Dwadasi. It removes all sins and is famous as Mohini Ekadasi. Truly, O Ram, the merit of this Ekadasi frees this fortunate soul who observes it from the network of illusion. Therefore, if you want to relieve your suffering, observe this auspicious Ekadasi perfectly, for it removes all obstacles from one's path and relieves the greatest miseries. Kindly listen as I describe its glories, because for one who even just hears about this auspicious Ekadasi, the greatest sins are nullified. On the banks of the Saraswati River, there was once a beautiful city named Vrindavan, which was ruled by King Dutiman, who O Ram, that steadfast, truthful, and highly intelligent king, was born in the dynasty of the moon. In his kingdom was a merchant named Dhanapal, who possessed a great wealth of food grains and money. He was also very pious. Dhanapala arranged for lakes to be dug, sacrificial arenas to be erected, and beautiful gardens to be cultivated for the benefit of all the citizens of Bhadravati. He was an excellent devotee of Vishnu and had 5 sons: Sumana, Dutiman, Medhavi, Sukriti, and Drishtabhuti. Unfortunately, his son Drishtabhuti always engaged in greatly sinful activities, such as sleeping with prostitutes, associating with degraded persons. He enjoyed illicit sex, gambling, and many other varieties of sense gratification. He disrespected the demigods, Brahmins, forefathers, and other elders, and his family guests. The evil-hearted Drishtabhuti spent his father's wealth indiscriminately, always feasting on untouchable foods and drinking wine to excess. One day, Dhanapala kicked Drishtabhuti out of the house after he saw him walking along the road arm in arm with a prostitute. From then on, all Drishtabhuti's relatives were highly critical of him and distanced themselves from him. After he had sold his ornaments and become destitute, the prostitutes also abandoned him and insulted him because of his poverty. Drishtabhuti was now full of anxiety and also hungry. He thought, what should I do? Where should I go? How can I maintain myself? He then began to steal. The king's constables arrested him, but when they learned that his father was the famous Dhanapal, they released him. He was caught and released many times, but at last the ill-mannered Drishtabhuti was apprehended, handcuffed, and then beaten. After whipping him, the king's marshals warned him, "O evil one, there is no place for you here." However, Drishtabhuti was freed from his tribulation by his father and immediately thereafter entered the dense forest. He wandered here and there, hungry and thirsty and suffering greatly. Eventually he began killing lions, deer, boars, and wolves for food. Always ready in his hand was his bow. Always on his shoulder, his quiver full of sharp arrows. He also killed many birds, such as chakoras, peacocks, conchas, doves, and pigeons. He unhesitatingly slaughtered many species of birds and animals, and thus his sins, mounted day by day. On account of his previous sins, he was now immersed in an ocean of great sin. Drishtabhuti was always miserable and anxious. But one day, during the month of Vaisakha, by the force of some of his past merit, he chanced upon the sacred ashram of Kaundinya Muni. The great sage had just finished bathing in the Ganges River, and water was dripping from him. Drishtabhuti had the great good fortune to touch some of those drops falling from the sage's clothes. Instantly, Drishtabhuti was freed of ignorance, and his sinful reactions were reduced. Offering his humble obeisances to Kaundinya Muni, Drishtabhuti prayed to him with joined palms. "Oh, great Brahman, please describe some kind of atonement I may perform without too much endeavor. I have committed so many sins in my life, and these have now made me very poor." The great Rishi replied, "O son, listen with great attention, for by hearing me you will become free of all your remaining sins. In the light fortnight of this month, Vaisakha, there occurs the sacred Mohini Ekadasi, which has the power to nullify sins as vast and weighty as Mount Sumeru. If you followed my advice and faithfully observe a fast on this Ekadasi, which is so dear to Lord Hari, you will be freed from all the sinful reactions of many, many births." Hearing these words with great joy, Drishtabhuti promised to observe a fast on Mohini Ekadasi according to the sage's instructions. "O best of kings, O Ram, by fasting completely on Mohini Ekadasi, the once sinful Drishtabhuti, the prodigal son of the merchant Dhanapal, became sinless. Afterward, he achieved a beautiful transcendental form, and, free at last of all obstacles, rode upon Garuda, the carrier of Vishnu, to the Lord's supreme abode. O Ram, the fast day of Mohini Ekadasi removes the darkest illusory attachments to material existence. There is thus no better fast day in all the three worlds." Lord Krishna concluded, "And so, O Yudhisthira, there is no place of pilgrimage, no sacrifice, no charity that can bestow merit equal to even 1/16 of the merit a faithful devotee of mine obtains by observing Mohini Ekadasi. And he who hears and studies the glories of Mohini Ekadasi achieves the merit of giving away 1,000 cows in charity." You all have just done that. Thus ends the narration of the glories of Vaisakha Sukla Ekadasi, or Mohini Ekadasi, from the Kurma Purana. So the following Ekadasi will be Apara Ekadasi. But do you see why I keep Ekadasi? Because just look how, this is Krishna's own word on how much he values the keeping of Ekadasi. So when I read this book, I said, wow, I'm going to keep Ekadasi from now. So since about 2010 or so.
They need their book in the bookstore.
They do. They have it? No, they don't. Oh, no, they do need it.
Well, the reason they don't is because Krishna Balaram Swami is fallen. He was fallen, I don't know at what point in his history, but he had fallen after
Krishna Balaram Swami.
Krishna Balaram Swami, yeah. he had children all over the world. He had children in Africa, children in South America. And then when he came here, he accused me of having some relations with a woman, and I was acting as brahmachari for years. I never had no.
Yeah.
So immediately something, seemed like it was on. But still, nevertheless, the Ekadasi book is, you're not going to be able to,
Yeah.
say that this isn't beneficial book for all of us. So we did chant the invocation. We are on verse 31, is it? 31. We are reading from Shrimadbhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 5, verse 31. Yanaivaham Bhagavato Yanaivaham Bhagavato Vasudevasya Vedhasa Vasudevasya Vedasaha Mayanubhavam Avidam Mayanubhavam Avidam Yena Gachanti Tatparam Yena Gachanti Tatparam Yanaivaham Bhagavato Vasudevasya Vedasa Mayanubhavam Avidam Yena Gachanti Tatparam Yena Vaham Bhagavato Vasudevasya Vedasa Mayanubhavam Avidam Yena Gachanti Tatparam Yena Vaham Bhagavato Vasudevasya Vedasa Mayanubhavam Avidam Yena Gachanti Tatparam. Please stand. Yenaivaham Bhagavato Vasudevasya Vedasa Mayanubhavam Avidam Yena Gachanti Tatparam. Yena, by which, Eva, certainly, Aham, I, Bhagavata, of the personality of Godhead, Vasudevasya, of Lord Sri Krishna, Vedasa, of the Supreme Creator, Maya, energy, Anubhava, influence, Avidam, easily understood, Yena, by which, Gajanti, they go, Tatparam, at the lotus feet of the Lord. Yanaivam Bhagavato Vasudevasya Vedasa Mayanubhavam Avidam Yena Gachanti Tatparam. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. By that confidential knowledge, I could understand clearly the influence of the energy of Lord Sri Krishna, the creator, maintainer, and annihilator of everything. By knowing that, one can return to Him and personally meet Him. Jai, please repeat. By that confidential knowledge, I could understand clearly the influence of the energy of Lord Sri Krishna, the creator, maintainer and annihilator of everything.
Of everything.
By knowing that,
I know that.
one can return to him. And personally meet him.
And personally meet him.
By that confidential knowledge, I can understand clearly the influence of the energy of Lord Sri Krishna, the creator, maintainer, and annihilator of everything. By knowing that, one can return to him and personally meet him. Purport by his divine grace of Charnadavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. By devotional service, or by the most confidential knowledge, one can understand very easily how the different energies of the Lord are working. One part of energy is manifesting the material world. The other, superior part of his energy, is manifesting the spiritual world. And the Vita medium energy is manifesting the living entities who are serving either of the above-mentioned energies. The living entities serving material energy are struggling hard for existence and happiness, which is presented to them as illusion. But those in the spiritual energy are placed under the direct service of the Lord in eternal life, complete knowledge, and perpetual bliss. The Lord desires, as he has directly said in the Bhagavad Gita, that all conditioned souls rotting in the kingdom of material energy come back to him by giving up all engagements in the material world. This is the most confidential part of knowledge, but this can be understood only by the pure devotees, and only such devotees enter the kingdom of God to see him personally and serve him personally. The concrete example is Narad himself, who attained the stage of eternal knowledge and eternal bliss. And the ways and means are open to all, provided one agrees to follow in the footsteps of Sri Narad Muni. According to Shruti, the Supreme Lord has unlimited energies without effort by him. And these are described under 3 principal headings, as above mentioned: the creating, maintaining, and annihilating of everything. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshusha Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. And we're seeing here, being pointed out, that Krishna takes all 3 positions to create, maintain, and annihilate the universe at the time, the chosen time. So the annihilation will come to those souls who have so many times been given the opportunities. Can you imagine? Now, if we stay till the end of this universe and don't get convinced, that's what it will be for many of these souls. They just keep rejecting, and so then they have to go back into Mahavishnu's body. But as we can see here, Krishna gave Narad Muni eternal, it says perpetual service, so that this reveals to us the kind of relationship being offered by Krishna himself to the souls who are faithful. This is bringing that out. All we have to do is follow this process Srila Prabhupada's given us. We're going to have personal association with the Supreme Person himself.
Faith.
Yeah, that's just amazing to me. It's amazing what these literatures are. And you know, they look like just any other group of books, But what revealing truths are contained in these words of Bhagavatam. It's just amazing in every verse. And then too, each time reading it becomes more and more a complete viewpoint that clears the mind of the illusions that we are under in this material world, to give us an idea, a bit of our consciousness being filled with that realization of just who Krishna is and our relationship, our eternal relationship to him. And that should be like constant.
Everyone.
Yeah. And it's pointed out here, isn't it? Everyone. And in times past it wasn't. And in times past, scriptures were so rare. These scriptures were written on palm leaves by Ganesh. He wrote them on palm leaves. And very few human beings even had them in their possession. So these souls that got contact with spiritually advanced souls, they would walk 40 miles to hear a verse of Shrimadbhagavatam spoken on, or to be able to read themselves from it. But even rare was the ability that they had to read themselves. It was in the charge of Brahmins only. And as this is pointing out here now, we as well, because in this age everybody is born Sudra. So we all have these tendencies to cheating one another. Our senses are imperfect. We have desires that are way out of whack. And so by all these disqualifications, in previous ages we would not even be allowed to have access to these transcendental literatures. As I was speaking yesterday in class, the real confidential import of the confidential knowledge is the fact that each and every one of us are having a unique, one and only experience with Krishna that nobody else is having. Think about it. Nobody else has been through every step of your life with you than Krishna. Nobody else. Nobody else has been able to see everything you've seen in your life, heard everything, knows everything that you've heard, everything you've been exposed to, every single act. And he's remained with you no matter how disobedient, or arrogant, or out of the way we wandered. He's still nevertheless brought us to this point now where we can have full knowledge of him. With this chanting, and if you have the day off today, I'm thinking very seriously of just spending the day in the temple and chanting all day long. When you see how easy it is to mispronounce a word, I've been wanting to bring this up. When they have fire sacrifices, which Krishna was explaining the benefits of in the Ekadasi book, the mispronunciation of one word can cause the whole sacrifice to have an end result completely different from the desired end. So there are Shiksha gurus that stand by the chanters in case a mispronunciation is made. Yeah. So that it can be corrected, so to speak, and oversounded. And see, these sacrifices being established by Krishna originally were meant for all the benefit of all of the, just as we see this here. Krishna's intent is for all forms of life. And all those forms of life that took part in the sacrifice, including those that were sacrificed, got a better body from it. So, same way we're being promised a better set of circumstances the next time around. Though a horse sacrifice, the horse came out of the fire. Well, the sacrifice was performed, so it was immediately changing of bodies. We talked about previously these cultures that could, change their forms into animal form. They could become different forms like that. Well, these fire sacrifices, in a sense, perform the same function because the participant would get a brand new body. Yeah. But over time, with the Brahmins becoming unqualified then, the old horse would be the old horse. He'd go through the fire and he would die. The fire couldn't even go through the fire.
And is that when Lord Buddha came?
That's when Lord Buddha came, and why too, yeah. See, and how we can see that Krishna is so intimately involved in the conduct of human beings. Just remember, he's super soul, inside of all those, performing the sacrifices, and he knows why they're performing them. Because piously, they're thinking they're doing God's service. So he corrects. So he comes to correct. Because he's the initiator of all these processes, even though we look at all of them as something other than what we're supposed to engage in, or maybe they are primitive or, aboriginal, or all these terms we give to these groups of people who had a process given to them from the beginning. Humankind was not left without a means of knowing God from the beginning. But as man turns away from what he doesn't realize is the best way, and he tries to find, like that young son we were talking about, out of all of his sons, he had one bad one. But the bad one turned away. So that's an example of how we are too. Many times these examples being given are talking about us, and we think it's somebody else. We get into King Prachanabarishat, and he was being told about another king with a name starting with a P. I can't remember his name. Maybe it was his real name, and then he was being told about Prachanabarishat. And all the time the story was about him. He didn't know it. But Narad Muni was covering up his name so that he could accept it. So he comes right out and addresses the king. The king might have the idea to, put him in prison for a while. Okay. And that's the way kings were. Especially if you were close. You could say the least little thing wrong. See that, what we're talking about offenses, in Sanskrit, the sound vibration is the substance. So if you say something wrong, you could create a completely different substance altogether. So that's why learning these words, we want to learn them from someone who knows what they mean, right? And we can see how important it is that when we recite them. That's why I really appreciate, when I used to study the Bible, I used to wonder, I wonder if this is really the meaning of the original words, But Srila Prabhupada makes it so easy for us to look and see the meanings of these words, giving us word for word for word. So there's no question in our mind that it came directly from Krishna himself. We can find so many mistakes in so many literatures that are credited with being sacred, but nevertheless they give intelligence, they give knowledge about God. We have expectations, we want everything perfect, which Krishna is, and which Srila Prabhupada is revealing to us in its most perfect state. And so we can really, as the invocation brings out, that Bhagavatam has no need for the support from any other scriptures. But you can see by study of it that it gives realization of all these other scriptures, just like you were saying about Lord Buddha. And we have understanding which many of his own disciples did not have understanding about why he came to lead them away from the forms of quote-unquote religion that their forefathers that are now practicing were believing was worship of God. And now they are believing there is no such thing as God. But by following Lord Buddha, who is God, and then they get the benefit. So see how profound God himself can create a form of atheism that gives the followers benefit. This is the extent Krishna goes to finding a means to deliver mankind from his own misgivings. Isn't it amazing? Krishna is just amazing. And then revealed to us the insides of it. Yeah, that's the confidential knowledge. So when we're coming in contact with other people who need Krishna, and Krishna, who is the one wanting to give it to them through us, he can let us see as well. They're just like was being revealed to the great sage who was revealing this. Srila Prabhupada said, I think it was Sanaka Rishi, it was being revealed to him just like we see a television. Bhagavatam and everything being spoken by Sukadeva Goswami was seeing, Sanaka Rishi, I believe it was, he was seeing, he was seeing the event taking place right before his eyes. This recitation of Bhagavatam by Sukadeva Goswami to Maharaj Parikshit. And he can do that to each of us. Do the same thing with Bhagavad Gita. Same thing he did to Arjuna on the battlefield. He can, while we're looking at the sky, he can reveal that universal body to us. I like outside better than I like inside, when it's not raining or snowing or freezing. But Krishna's not limited. We leave our bodies inside. The soul's not restricted by walls or anything like that. What to speak, if it can get out of the body, mucus, pus, and blood pile, can get out of anything. Because it's finite, more finite than the atoms. Can you imagine how so subtle the soul is? And then, well, the energies that are as well are subtle, but they are controlling everything, these energies. And we don't know they're controlling us too. The modes, yeah. But as we continue on the path, we'll become more and more freed from the modes. Desire ignites the fire of the modes that burns more desire in us. So the more we allow, as Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, whatever you give the mind, the concentration of, doesn't take long. It takes the mind right off, takes the soul right off the path. The mind can take it right off. So it can be our greatest friend or our worst enemy. And for most people who we're seeing totally control their minds, for them as their worst enemies. Because that's what they're giving their desires. The mind, they're giving the mind the ability to satisfy their desires, which are leading them to more suffering. An endless pursuit of these desires to be fulfilled keeps us wrapped up in the material energy. And there are much more efficient bodies that can obtain these things much more easy. A squirrel, what's he got to do? All he does is run around and eat and sleep and defend and mate a lot. Monkeys, I was just reading about monkeys. Srila Prabhupada says most monkeys keep 12, he says, up to 24 wives. Every day visiting 2, 3, 4 of them. So that is by developed consciousness, that nature. And we see this happening in teenagers. And amongst teenagers, the higher the score, the more the hero.
Right.
The greater the hero. So, moving into Prashana time. See, what Ekadasi, I was told, is so important that we don't even shave on Ekadasi. Because you spend as little time as possible on the material body, even. And that way we remain free from, if we can just immerse ourselves in the scriptural teachings all day long, that's the best escape from Maya and desires. But otherwise, whatever we're doing, if we can just be thinking about Krishna, then soon we'll be having that experience like they were having, I was speaking about yesterday, in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's revealed that there was a whole city of devotees that they only chanted. For 3 days they chanted solidly. A whole city of people. And the experiences of them are revealed that everything works so smoothly and perfectly. So the use of our senses in this material world that we've become accustomed to, we can know as we apply these principles of Krishna consciousness to becoming free from the control of material energy, we'll gain more control over our senses. So those deeds that we do, they will become more and more perfected. But of course, as we age and our bodies lose the ability to function as they did when we were younger, I haven't gotten to the point yet to believe that's necessarily absolute truth. Because the example given of Narad Muni, he's in the same body as far as I know now that he had then. And he's going all over the universe, anywhere. So by Krishna's own speaking to us, he can breathe into us a life that we have that can transform these bodies into eternal substances. That's what he did with Narad Muni. But there's a place in Narad Muni's experience as well. He had to turn into a woman.
Free?
There's a place before you enter into Lord Shiva's presence, you have to pass this water that will, when you come out, you're a woman. You're a gopi. Yeah.
Wow.
And Narad Muni had to go through that, if I'm not mistaken. But that's Lord Shiva's pastimes.
Oh, okay.
So, see, this reveals to us, here and there, all these stories, if we're looking, give us hints about the supernatural nature of the close friends of Krishna who are taking part in these exchanges with Krishna that are extremely out of the ordinary. Yeah. So we can have those experiences too, but without the desire to only hope to be able to engage in service if we can have these certain experiences. The Bible uses a quote, it says, an evil generation is looking after signs, looking for signs. Oh Lord, I'll follow you if you prove to me that you're real, you know. Mm-hmm. What kind of friendship would that be? I don't really believe you. I don't really believe that you even exist, so prove it to me. This is just another aspect of the arrogance of the soul, you know. False ego, not the soul, false ego. But the soul puts itself in a position to be controlled by the force of the false ego. That you get one part of the pride or the arrogance, and then it just leads you further and further deeper into it. And then again in the Bible it says, God will actually, just like ironing a piece of cloth, how it gets a crease ironed into it, then the soul gets that. If that's its desire, to the extent that it will go against God's teachings purposely, then God will make it easy for that soul to do that. So we have to be careful, even with our desires, every day when we're desiring, we have to question ourselves, why do we want this? What is it for? Is it to help my service? Is it continue my service with Krishna and make me function better in the world? Then that's good for devotional service. If it's not, then we have to check the mind. And what is it? Whips of the mind. These mantras act like whips. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, when he woke up, he said, we should beat the mind with a shoe.
Okay.
So, see, when we recite this Shikshastakam, it brings us to the realization that we should know our place, lower than the straw in the street. The devotees used to take a piece of straw in their mouth to remind them of where we are, you know. So that by taking this position as well, if we don't make ourselves arrogant, then people will want to hear what we have to say. Especially if we lift people up, which is what Krishna does to everybody. In which he reveals his purpose in coming is to bring us back to him, which is the highest lifting up there is. And we can lift people up. Lifting great mass amounts of gross material is looked at as a great feat in the material sense. But can you lift the soul to the spiritual world? That's the lifting that needs to be done. That's the real strength. Lift the soul to the spiritual world. And how do we do that? Just simply talk about Krishna. Easy way to go. Any comments, any questions, any realization?
I have a comment. We were talking about sacred languages, and most of the Christians think that the King James Version is a sacred language. What they don't realize is that King James and Shakespeare overlapped 40 years in their life.
Wow.
So the King James Bible is written in Old English.
Old English.
There's nothing sacred about it.
Yeah. And it used to be the King's,
Aramaic.
it was the King's English.
Yeah.
And so I think it was taken to give people the impression that they were of the echelon of the higher human beings that spoke in that way. It was more considered refined English. Thee and thou.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and all of that is just straight 16th century English.
Yeah.
There's nothing fancy about it.
Exactly.
It's actually kind of bastardized because it's real sloppy.
Yeah. And I lived with people that only spoke that way.
Yeah.
And I spoke that way myself for
Yeah.
a couple of years.
Yeah.
But it is in an American civilization which has adopted a certain way of speaking. It's somewhat making themselves foreign to the general public.
So all these and thous and all that, that's not sacred language.
Not at all.
That's bastardized English,
Exactly.
Old English.
And you know,
1543 is when the Bible was translated, and King James, they died in like 1587 and 1590 or something like
Yeah.
that. So they were alive at the same time.
Yeah.
So
is that the
there's all
Renaissance
kinds
period? What they call the Renaissance period? Yeah.
And there's a lot of speculations that Shakespeare actually had influence in translating
Oh.
into English. Yeah. So there's a lot of speculation. Well, of course, there's ton of speculation about Shakespeare anyway.
Yeah. Well, I read the book called The Dead Sea Scroll, which describes how they had found these scrolls. They're like frozen because they're so old, they're stiff. If you move them, they fall apart. They had to slice them in half with as thin as a paper blade. Then they sealed them with a plastic-like coating. Then by half circles, they laid them together, fitting with each other, and then they read them like that. Yeah. But the wording itself says, if anyone tries to change the words in here, they will get all the plagues that are found in these writings. And then they come to the name of the one they're saying is the Savior, whose name is the one and only name that anyone can find salvation by, and they change it. What kind of ridiculous nonsense is that? What kind of realization could people who are doing that?
You gotta realize that mentality, they were sacrificing lambs and sheep and calves for blood and fire sacrifices daily.
And they're still doing it is the thing.
Yeah,
The
daily.
best of my knowledge. Does anybody know they are still out sacrificing animals, aren't they?
Some sects of Christianity in Africa are still, yes.
Oh, Christianity. Yeah, Christianity is doing that too, you're saying?
Yeah, the old Christianity is really different in Africa. It's really primitive.
Wow.
Yeah, the Christianity that exists in Africa is really primitive.
Because see, nothing is being said about this by Christianity itself and its difference
Well, I tell you,
between that and sacrificing like the Jewish people are
when
doing.
I was a kid in my conservative Christian church, we sang hymns like, "Are you washed in the blood of
Oh
the
yeah.
Lamb?"
Oh yeah.
And what kind of image is that for a 5-year-old?
Okay. Wow.
5 years old, singing, "Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb?" What do you think I'm thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Everybody
see-
around me is bloody.
See too, when they performed the sacrifice, the child had to stick his finger in the dead body of the animal that was sacrificed to know that sin brings forth death.
Wow.
That was the message, so that they would not sin, and especially if the lamb was one of theirs that they had befriended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when Moses and them left Egypt and they got out into the wilderness and they built the tabernacle, the traveling tent,
Yeah.
that's when they started the sacrifices.
Yeah.
That's when the 12 tribes were called.
Yeah.
That's when the 12 priests were called to the tabernacle. And that on the daily blood and fire sacrifices of lambs. Not just one, hundreds and hundreds of people. You brought your lamb for your family to be sacrificed.
Yeah.
And this happened continually. It was a constant smoke.
But they didn't only use lambs; they used
Everything.
yeah, doves.
Except unless it had cloven hooves, that was the only
Right.
right.
Chewed the cud.
Yeah.
Right. Chewed the cud. The goats.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then in the ocean, was it anything with scales?
Yeah.
And then anything else was unclean. But see, our philosophy is everything in the ocean is scavengers. They will eat whatever falls out of the sky.
That's true.
Yeah, that's what a fish does. And so the consciousness is not, there's no discrimination whatsoever at all. And when you see the animal kingdom's restrictions on their ability to taste even, with the tongues they have, and inside of some of their mouths, it's like the whole mouth is teeth. Like these birds out here. You look inside of the mouth, they got rows of sharp edges that
You know, a
grind.
tiger's tongue is abrasive enough to lick the cells of skin off.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what they're made for.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Any other questions? Realization? John. Shrimadbhagavatam. Ida Srila Prabhupada. Ki Jai. Try and spend as much of the day as possible in Krishna Katha.